Life Audio.
Welcome to Christian Natural Health with naturopathic Dr. Lauren DeVille. Christian Natural Health is the podcast on how to get and stay healthy, God's way. You'll hear topics on nutrition, exercise, sleep, avoiding toxicity, meditating on scripture, what supplements to take, stress management, defeating anxiety and worry, how to reconcile Eastern medicine approaches with Christianity, and a whole lot more. Now, here's your host, Dr. Lauren.
Is life feeling chaotic? I get it. I'm Rachel Wojo, host of the Untangling Life podcast. Don't miss the passionate encouragement and faith-based resources you need to help you clear your head and calm your heart. As Shell says, it feels like Rachel always knows what I need to hear. She keeps it real and is so humble. Her podcast is just the cherry on top. Enjoy Untangling Life with Rachel Wojo on lifeaudio.com or your favorite podcast app now.
At Rocket, we know buying a home is exciting and a bit overwhelming. Ready to buy a home but stressed about writing those big checks? Rocket can help you save. When you buy with Rocket Homes and finance with Rocket Mortgage, you can get up to $10,000 cash toward closing from Rocket Mortgage. It's a pretty big deal, and one you can get only with Rocket. Visit onlywithrocket.com to get started today.
For purchase transactions only, must log rate between 331 and 831. Call 8337-ROCKET for conditions and restrictions. Equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Welcome back to another episode of Christian Natural Health. Today, I am very excited to have Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum. He is one of the most frequently quoted integrative pain and fibromyalgia medical authorities in the world. He's the author of the best-selling From Fatigued to Fantastic, Pain-Free 123, The Complete Guide to Beating Sugar Addiction, Real Cause, Real Cure, The Fatigue and Fibromyalgia Solution, Diabetes is Optional, and the popular free smartphone app Cures A to Z. He is the lead author of 8 studies on effective treatment for fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome and a study on effective treatment of autism using NAET. Dr. Teitelbaum appears often as a guest on news and talk shows nationwide, including Good Morning America, The Dr. Oz Show, Oprah and Friends, CNN, and Fox News Health. Welcome, Jacob. This is such an honor.
Lauren, it's awesome to be with you and with the gang. And for those of you who are joining us today, you're going to get a lot of good information. If you have pain, if you have fatigue, if you have long COVID, if you have CFS or fibromyalgia, any of those things, these are all parts of the human energy crisis that are going on. We are going to teach you how to turbocharge energy easily, how to make those problems go away, and how to get your life back. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. So why do chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia especially tend to go together? Is there like an underlying link between them?
Yeah, they're the same disease in most people. You know, I tease people, ask, what's the difference? You know, and again, I can say that there's about 20% who don't have pain. But for the people who have pain, they're the same disease. If you go to the rheumatologist, they'll come out to the diagnosis of fibromyalgia. You go next door to the infectious disease specialist to come out to a diagnosis of CFS. Let me give you the main difference between the two. The CFS is one of the most crappy diagnostic criteria ever created in the 50 years I've been in medicine. There are a few other things that are worse, like TSH. Relying on TSH for thyroid, that's even worse than that. The fibromyalgia diagnostic criteria are much more useful.
Gotcha. And what's the connection between those and sleep?
Okay, so what's happening in CFS and fibromyalgia, I'm going to use them interchangeably. These represent an energy crisis where any of a number of things have dropped your energy production or increased demands, such as infections, increased demands on the body energetically, to where you basically trip a circuit breaker. Energy goes so low, the area that uses the most energy for its size is a small almond-sized circuit breaker called the hypothalamus, right in this area of the brain. That area controls sleep, hormones, and blood pressure or autonomic function. So you'll find that you have trouble sleeping even though you're exhausted. Your entire hormone system will go off whack despite normal testing. And when you stand up, gravity sends blood to your legs, and instead of the autonomic system sending it back up, it stays down there. So people get racing heart, and then they get brain fog, and they get all these different things. So basically, you're tripping a circuit breaker and restoring energy production and getting rid of the things that are unnecessarily draining energy is one way, a main way to turn this circuit breaker back on. And for those who have more of a little bit of like the research, well, show me. It's like a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study published in major CFS journal, put together with the help of researchers at the NAET, showed 90% of people, 91% of people improved with an average 90% increase in quality of life. This is p-value less than 0.0001 versus placebo. This is dramatic effect by using the SHINE protocol.
Right.
And this is where we optimize sleep, hormones, and hypertension, infections, nutrition, exercise as able. Not these, go on and exercise more where you crash and burn. We're not talking about that. They're talking about just enough to maintain conditioning as able.
Got it. Okay. So, and it sounds like for, as far as the circuit breaker getting tripped, give us an example of what does this look like? How does that happen in the first place? How does the hypothalamus end up kind of
being the circuit breaker? Exactly. What happens is the hypothalamus uses more energy for its size than any place else in the body. Okay. Because of that, as energy levels start to drop down, that's the first thing that goes offline. The next area that uses the most size for anything in the body would be the for its use most energy for its size in the body would be the muscles. Muscles use a good bit of energy, but here's the funny thing: we think that intuitively, if the muscles run out of energy, they'd go loose and limp. But no, if you come home after a heavy workout, you don't go, honey, my muscles are all loose and limp. You see, they're tight.
Right. Absolutely.
And so it's interesting. It takes more energy for muscles to stretch. So like a spring, it takes more energy to stretch that spring than to contract. And if you just look, and there's the charts in terms of what it takes in terms of the energy production for both things. So when you don't have enough energy, your muscles get stuck in a shortened position. And after a couple of hours or weeks or months or years of that, they hurt like hell. And then now you're off to the races because the chronic pain triggers brain pain, central sensitization, microglial activation, blah, blah, blah. Basically brain stimulated by the pain coming from the brain itself. And then you get the neuropathy, small fiber neuropathy pain. So basically this is a cascade event. Energy goes down, trips the circuit breaker, throws the muscles into tightening and pain, triggers the immune system to get exhausted. And now you got the whole process getting set into play.
Okay, so backing up to the root cause of the very beginning of this whole process, it sounds like it's the energy depletion. Are we talking about mitochondria?
Yes, we are. These are the body's energy furnaces. And if they're inefficient or if they're starting to break down because of free radical damage or any of dozens of other triggers that can cause changes or the energy or the furnaces are just not working as well. There's not as many and they're malfunctioning. Then you drop energy production, and that's a part, not the part, but a key part of the vicious cycle.
Got it. Okay. So it sounds like from what you're talking about with the SHINE protocol, you kind of have to hit all of these different pathways simultaneously in order to achieve the optimal results. Is that true?
You don't necessarily have to do all. If you do enough of them, your body will take over for the rest.
There. Okay. Got it. And so can you also distinguish, a lot of times people talk about just adrenal fatigue. How does adrenal fatigue compare to hypothalamic dysfunction? What would you say is the difference?
It's a subset. It's one piece of it. So when you'll see the early hypothalamic dysfunction, you'll see the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis goes down. So the adrenal fatigue can be where the glands themselves, or two little areas that sit atop the kidneys, have just exhausted. And that happens from stress. Again, the adrenals are the alarms. So it's kind of like the bugler in the army that goes, and sends everybody off, and, to mobilize everything. And that works, and you fight your battle. But if that bugler is just blowing that horn all day and all night, which is what's happening in modern society, we live in a society where those who in power, which is basically those who own the media, same thing, have realized that when I was your age, the Madison Avenue advertising executive mantra was sex sells. You wanted to sell something. You had handsome guys and pretty gals, and they were buy the cars or the beer or whatever you wanted to sell. Now the mantra is fear and divisiveness sells. If they can keep you scared to death and hating everybody else, they can control you. They can keep you watching 24/7.
That is very profound. Absolutely true, for sure.
Yes. Yep.
So,
and it exhausts your adrenal glands.
Yeah, I've seen a whole lot of that since 2020, especially a lot of people that are just overburdened and completely exhausted.
COVID was one more attempt, and then then that industry was saying, give us everything, don't ask questions. This is COVID, damn it, we got that money now. Laws, regulations, safety, screw that. They were using fear. Right. Doing all this, and now we have the war going on, with Russia, and again, I tend to be not in favor of the military-industrial complex that basically sucks money and gets us into wars for every year since I've been born, except one. We've been doing what Russia is doing. We don't hear about it in the media. It's like, oh, no, we're not attacking countries. There's not been a single year, except 1 year since I've been born, that the United States has not been in a country overthrowing its government or sending its troops there. But we're the good guys. No, we're not. We're going in to take their stuff and control them. We're doing the same thing Russia is doing, but we're not doing it to white people in Europe.
Yeah, I think
so. But the bottom line is each of these, and I'm for what they're doing now in Ukraine. I'm for supporting them. Just like in World War II, I was for that. But each of these industries are basically trying to scare you to death and exhausting your adrenals. So I'm going to recommend a simple thing. It's a Tai Chi move. If you're watching a newscast and you find that it's now for the next crisis, to me, it's in the world, everything's a crisis, and it's going to be the worst weather ever, and there's no safe place. That's funny. This is the headline. They said, no safe place left in America or in the world. It's like, for weather, it's like, oh my God, So it's a simple Tai Chi move that your adrenals will love. It's like, center, breathe, nice deep breath, reach to the side, all the way, grab your remote and click off.
Absolutely.
Your adrenals will thank you.
I agree. And I've had a lot of people that I've sort of told over the last couple of years, especially, what I typically do is I get the headlines, I pray over them, and I delete them because you don't need to know all the details. It just stresses you
out. They're also fiction.
That's often the case as well.
I'm in the media a lot. For some reason, they like me because I keep telling everybody, turn it off, and liking me, if I'm accurately quoted where what I'm really saying is being said, 20% of the time, that's a lot. 20% of the time, none of the words that they're quoting are mine.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
And in between, they're misquoting. It's a fiction. They're nice people. I've never met anybody in the media, in the pharmaceutical industry, the FDA, or in government who wasn't the love. They are nice people in institutions that are corrupt. And it's propaganda. If you just think of it, we talk about Russia and how do the people not know they're invading a country? No, we're fighting Nazis. We're fighting for freedom of the motherland and protect us. It's propaganda can get people looking at things that much. If you just realize all that stuff on the media is the same propaganda from another side. It's a fiction. Turn it off. Go out for a walk in nature. Go hug your family. Go sit and read a book. And you'll find that your adrenals will heal.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good place to start once somebody's in that situation already. But once they find themselves in this hypothalamic dysfunction, so where would you say, you said you don't have to do the entire SHINE protocol simultaneously. Where do they start? And then at what point do you recognize, because you kind of alluded to toxicity and infections and things like that. Is it completely individual, or are there certain places you typically start?
So it's a mix. So let's just wrap up the low adrenal. How do you tell you have low adrenal? If you get hangry, irritable when hungry,
Mhm.
I would trade. I would keep that one question. Do you get irritable when hungry? Ask not just to the person, but whoever's with them, their spouse or whatever.
Yeah,
Because sometimes
absolutely.
the person will go, I don't know when the spouse is going,
Yes,
you know,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, for
um,
sure.
treat the adrenal. There's a nice simple supplement called Adrenoplex, cutting down sugar, increasing salt, increasing water. The Adrenoplex is nice because it has all the supplements and glandulars and B5 and vitamin C and licorice and all the things you need in it. So I like that. That'll smooth it right out. Um, so if it's just that and you're sleeping okay, don't worry about it. Just treat the adrenal. But say you find you're exhausted and you can't sleep, that paradox. That because normally you're exhausted, you have a weekend off, you sleep the whole weekend. Exhausted and can't sleep. That paradox tells you you've tripped the circuit breaker that controls sleep, that hypothalamic circuit breaker. You now are in the CFS and fibromyalgia realm. Whether or not you fit the criteria or not, that tripping that circuit breaker is going on. So what do? What I recommend that people do is to start initially. Hold on just a second. Is to go ahead and start initially with a good multivitamin. B vitamins and magnesium are critical. You just really have to have those. I like one called Clinical Essentials. I'll get the tablets, not the capsules. Take 2 a day, easy. I would also start with ribose. There's a mix of ribose, ashwagandha, rhodiola, green tea extract, licorice, and schisandro. That's called Smart Energy System. In our recent study that we're getting ready for publication now, and this was in people who had at least a 50% drop in function. They're crippled from their fatigue. 60% are improved by one bottle, and 60% average increase in energy, 80% increase in stamina. So a nice simple thing that starts with a multivitamin, Smart Energy System, and then the HRG 80 red ginseng. We did a study of 188 people with severe, I don't want to talk about diseases in the context of a thing, but who had at least a 50% drop in energy with the brain fog, pain, and the whole thing. They also, about 2/3 of them improved. It has to be the HRG 80. I would get the chewable tablets, not the capsules, because it's a quarter of the cost. And you can adjust it. I find for me, just half a tablet is all I need on days that I want more energy. So that little trio right there for most people listening, whether you just have day-to-day fatigue or brain fog, or whether you've gone full blast and you've tripped a circuit breaker, you'll see a dramatic benefits. So that's if you ask where to start with those 3.
Okay. And tell us a little bit more about ribose. Why does that work for fatigue? And like, how much do you have to take in order for it to have that effect?
Now we talk about the mitochondria, and we talk about the mitochondria as kind of like the batteries. You can't eat, something from the table and suddenly turn it to have it be energy. It has to be converted by the mitochondria into ATP and ADH, all these different energy molecules. And if you look at these molecules all have ribose as the backbone. So if you look at adenosine, that's ribose plus vitamin B4. They haven't heard of it before. They devitamized. They turned Pluto. Pluto became a non-planet a couple of years ago, and vitamin.
They did that.
We decide. Sorry, it's like on The Simpsons when they threw that guy out of the billionaire club, and it's like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
well, so it's so the ribose is the backbone, and in energy depleted states, the body starts sacrificing the ribose. It will, instead of and making the energy triphosphate, the 3-phosphate bonds, it will sometimes mush 2 of the AMPs together to make 1 ADP, and then it has to throw one of the ribose away to do that. That's kind of basically when it's up against the wall in emergency situations trying to make enough energy. It can't be maintained because it's throwing out the acetylcarnitine, it's throwing out the ribose, it's losing the things that it's needing to make energy. So ribose is low, and the dosing, don't get tablets, it's stupid, get the powders. It's 5 grams 2 to 3 times a day. In the beginning, 3 times a day in the first 2 studies we did. But even one scoop a day is fine. I just throw it in my morning coffee or cereal or something. So 5 grams. And I like there's one called Shine Ribose. But any of the ones made by Bioenergy is good. If you do the Smart Energy system, that has your ribose in it.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So do you typically, if you're trying to target the mitochondria, do you just go with ribose? Do you go with the whole constellation of everything else in that system? So like the NADH and the CoQ10 and carnitine and all of that together?
So let's look at the N in Shine for nutrition. Number 1, cut down sugar. Number 2, increase salt. Most people do better with a high protein diet, but see what feels best to you. And of course, use common sense. Eat food, not junk. But then if you're looking at supplements, we talked about the clinical essentials, HRG 80, and the Smart Energy. Then I will add for coenzyme Q10, there's something called gamma cyclodextrin. It's a natural compound that I'm really blown away by. It increases absorption of nutrients 8-fold. It just puts it right through the gut, right through the cell walls. And so the red ginseng I mentioned used the chewable because it's a quarter the cost. In our study, we got the same effect from people using 1/4 the dose and probably even less of the tablets, because half got the capsules, half got the tablets. And the tablets did it because that has the gamma cyclodextrin in it. Tablets don't.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that one. That's fascinating. A way to...
It blew my mind. Gamma cyclodextrin.
Cyclodextrin, yeah, definitely we'll look into that.
So if you're tired of people taking handfuls of pills all day,
yeah, like get them more optimized. Absolutely.
Yep.
Sure.
So the CoQ10, I do 100 milligram CoQ10 by Europharma, Euromedica. It's the chewable CoQ10, and that's what I take myself. I just remember the first times I took those tablets. I'm pretty energy sensitive. I can feel energetics quite a bit, and just picking it up and putting it in my mouth, I could feel the difference with these things. It was remarkable. So definitely, I add the CoQ10. I add the acetyl L-carnitine, 2 grams a day, but just for 3 to 4 months. That fills the tank. Long term, that's not good to take every day unless you need to, maybe the 500, or unless you have neuropathic problems. But those are the key things that I'm going to go with. The iodine is already in the multi. So these organize the whole thing for people.
And so backing up to the ribose one more time, you were referring to the fact that it takes more energy for a muscle to relax than it does for it to contract. If somebody has that, where they feel like their muscles are already super tight, if they have a diagnosis of fibro or not, do you notice that ribose specifically helps those muscles to relax?
Absolutely. And that's why it helps the energy, helps the cognition. And the main cause of pain in this country is myofascial or tight muscle pain. And most doctors would not know tight muscle pain if it slapped them across the face. We are not trained in doing a muscle exam. There's a concept to throw a muscle relaxant at it. But if you ask the doctor to feel 2 different people's bodies and say, show me where the muscle trigger point is, trigger what?
Right. Yeah.
And I said, those are the things that tight thing. And well, I didn't learn about it. It's all quackery. And it's like, well, here's all the research. I don't have time to waste my time on all that pseudoscience. This is a conversation that most people, medicine's a religion these days. And like many religions, and God bless them, they tend to block out anything that doesn't agree.
Yeah, it's true.
And MD medicine, it's basically, how did the past editor of the New England Journal of Medicine say? That most medical education is slick advertising, pharmaceutical advertising, masquerading as science. Another editor of the New England Journal wrote an article in the New York Times saying she no longer believes most of what she reads in journals, because they basically are, what comes in the journals tells her who's paying the advertising for those journals. Now, of course, both of these editors soon left the New England Journal of Medicine after these statements, but just know. I mean, medicine, I love medicine. It's a wonderful tool, and it's an utter piece of crap for so much of what it teaches. But if you use it properly, it can be very powerful.
Sure, yeah. So segue on that, I wanted to ask, how did you get into functional medicine as opposed to the more mainstream approach?
The old-fashioned way. I grew up as a nice Jewish boy who was very empathic and wanted to be a healer. And to be a healer in that setting, there was, here's your choice. You go to med school or you don't. So it's not like there's a whole lot of options or consciousness of things in med school. My dad had died. I was paying my own way. So working full time, went to college in about 2.5 years because you pay by the semester, not by the credits. So it's like, okay, it's like 50% discount if you finish college in 2 years. Like
that sounds good.
Like,
yeah.
and,
Yeah.
yeah, and that was all easy, and then, I went to med school and I figured, well, I'll speed through that. And was working at Children's Hospital as on the burn, as a ICU nurse, and PICU nurse for the kids. And all that was easy. But then my family went through a meltdown, and figured I was the one they were going to peel in the middle. It was like one of those comedy shows. My uncle, literally trying to manipulate one of my other cousins, had a heart attack in my living room, a little living room, in med school. And I was not emotionally prepared to handle. So that stress and some other stresses are what set me up for an energy crisis. Then I got the drop dead flu, which clearly a nasty viral infection, atypical lymphocytosis of 25%, but not mono. But they couldn't identify the virus. And 6 weeks later, I was still too sick to function. So they said, well, it must be depressed med student syndrome. And so they did usual blow it off. And I just couldn't function. I couldn't work. I had no money. I was homeless, sleeping in parks. So there I was in Tulsa, in parks. And it's as if the universe put a holistic homeless medical school sign on my park bench. I still remember Brenda Johnson, who was this wonderful chakra teacher from England, happened to be passing through Texas as I was going through. And she taught me chakra work. Other people, taught me, reflexology and nutrition. And I met naturopaths. I didn't know there was. You can get a license and practice medicine doing this? And they said, uh-huh. And it's funny, I was all set to go, figure if I got better, I'd go back and get my, ND, go for a naturopathic degree. And there's another story that I'll say off the air on how the universe said, no, you're going back to medicine. But doing all these different things, I learned enough to get myself better. I learned about the candida issues, the adrenal issues, the nutritional issues, and all these bits and pieces. And I'm a science geek, so I got myself well enough. And was told, oh yeah, you can come back if you're feeling well enough. I thought it was done. It was like, no, really? I come back, and first my hair was down to here and my beard was down to here, and I remember putting a stethoscope to this 90-year-old guy's heart, and the cardiology professor says, Teitelbaum, when you walked in, he asked, who are you? And you said, the doctor. That man was going to have a heart attack. And I realized and he was right. And the guy wasn't being mean or anti, like long hair hippie types or anything like that. So that's when I cleaned up and yeah. So yeah. So I went back. And my nickname in college and med school was the Phantom, because I'd be in the medical library 2 to 4 in the morning most nights, going through the journals and just seeing not what the drug reps, God bless nobody. I mean, I was a horrible geek, too shy. If I try to talk to a girl, my tongue would roll out of my mouth across the floor. It's like totally helpless. And but you can always count on drug reps to come and soothe your ego. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah. But what I learned, in the journals, and I kept going to professors, but, it says vitamin B2, 400 milligrams decreases migraine frequency 67%. That's nonsense, pseudoscience. And look, the other B vitamins decrease migraine, and, heart failure decreases considerably, function improves. And it was funny. I'd give magnesium on the intensive care unit to the acute heart attack people, and they would all live and do fine. They wouldn't get the arrhythmias. They wouldn't get the whole thing. And the head of the CCU comes up, Bob Beer, says, what the hell are you doing to my CCU patients? I said, well, Bob, glad you asked. Here's a bunch of studies. He was at 1 in 10. who, instead of saying, I don't have time for this nonsense, and then they can honestly say, I've seen no research, haven't seen a bit. He actually looked at it and came back, what else you got? So this is how holistic doctors are made.
Yeah.
Is they accidentally take time to look at the studies instead of throwing them away.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's how those 10% become holistic. And being on the other side of the white coat, which was my experience. So those two things.
Yeah, so there was your own passion experience based on what happened to you too. So back to the concept of, you know, the energy crisis and all of the rest of that. How does thyroid play into this? As far as like the T4 to T3 conversion and thyroid generally, how is that interconnected?
So we talk about the hypothalamic circuit breaker that controls sleep. So you got to take care of sleep. It controls the blood pressure. Now, also, there's a lot of stuff we're talking about today. And if you want to email me at fatigue, DOC, like fatigue doctor, fatiguedoc@gmail.com. Just ask for the free information sheets for CFS or fibro, and I'll send you on maintaining the blood pressure. We don't have time to talk about the autonomic dysfunction. I'll send you a free information sheet that has 2 at-home test kits that you can see, and then how to take care of it, make it go away. But the thyroid is also controlled. The whole hormonal system is on the circuit breaker. So many things are happening. Number one, the body self-regulates. It's kind of tasting the thyroid level and seeing if it's as much as is needed all the time. And then it'll make something called TRH. That's kind of the CEO of the company that comes down and tells the foreman to make TSH, which tells the thyroid workers to make more thyroid. And in medicine, the only test most doctors will do is a TSH, which is a piece of crap test normally. But when the hypothalamus, and sorry for my language, it's just after 50 years in medicine.
I can imagine.
But with a hypothalamic dysfunction, as I lecture often at the national conferences worldwide, international conferences on CFS and fibro. I was lecturing once with Professor Gunther Neek, who's the most world-renowned researcher on thyroid issues in fibromyalgia. And I asked Gunther, is the TSH reliable in this disease? He said, absolutely not. Yet it's the only test that most doctors will look at and do. So number one, the foreman is asleep. They only make half as much TSH as normal, not enough to make it abnormal on the test. So number one. Number two, thyroid function is often down. Iodine deficiency, toxic halides, other things could all be contributing to that. And then the body has mechanisms for trying to turn down the thermostat on energy production to conserve energy during energy crises, which again is what fibromyalgia is. You have a pneumonia on the ICU, your thyroid hormone is being turned into a mirror image that instead of stimulating energy, shuts down energy. And the blood tests look normal unless they check the reverse T3. And then sometimes the cells just become deaf to the thyroid receptor resistance. So you need very high doses, not of the T4, that makes it worse, not the Synthroid, but of Cytomel, of T3 to overcome that. So the answer to what you're questioning, so what you heard was blah, 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 blah. The shorter answer is there's a lot of ways thyroid can become malfunctioning. And my book, shameless plug from Fatigue Fantastic, goes through each of these types of thyroid malfunction, how to tell, how to overcome it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and what do you say is the reason why adrenal fatigue or hypothalamic dysfunction generally leads to chronic infections? What's the connection there?
Chronic infections? Well, the thing is, the adrenals regulate the immune system. We don't know all the mechanisms, but we know that if you have a grossly overactive immune system, we give prednisone. It's an immune suppressant. And what most people don't realize is that too low of a cortisol. I've seen this decades in practice. People come in, as funny, people started flying to see me from all over the world as a general internal medicine doctor. And there I was in some down, country area, and they would walk in, they would all have a bottle of water they'd put on my desk. And I would go, well, let me play Dr. T, the psychic. Let's see, you're tired, achy, brain fog, can't sleep. You've got increased thirst, and they said, did my wife rat me out? Or my husband, usually, because it's mostly women who have diseases. So they're all interrelated, but they would also have frequent infections. Yeah, I get a big bug that comes around, takes forever to go away. What I found is when I treated their low adrenal, they'd come back the next time and say, Doc, I went the whole winter, didn't get sick once. Everybody else was sick. I didn't get sick at all.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The low adrenal
So that's-
causes poor immune function also.
and that also is what sets you up for the recurrent yeast issues as well.
Yes, because people get these recurrent infections and they feel like utter hell, and they tell the doctor, I need the antibiotics, which they often do. And that triggers yeast overgrowth, and there is no test for yeast overgrowth. So, of course, medically, there's no test, and it can't exist. Damn it. See, you don't exist because I can't see you. And that's the medical approach to it. It's like, my God, So, and yes, there are tests that you'll find out that I wouldn't give a nickel for any of them. How do I diagnose candida overgrowth? Nasal congestion, postnasal drip, chronic sinusitis, and/or irritable bowel syndrome, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. In the presence of, unless it's seasonal allergies causing the sinus stuff, this is most often going to be candida overgrowth. Now, sometimes the gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, there's this very high-tech test that I use, it's $20,000, that will distinguish between the SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and candida. And here's how the test goes. I ask, when you pass gas, is it like silent but deadlies? That sulfur rotten egg smell, and if they go yes, that's SIBO. If they go no, I can fill up a weather balloon, but not much, that's candida. And then you take the $20,000 and go have a really nice time.
That's the way to do it, for sure. Another thing you talk about in your book, From Fatigue to Fantastic, is the role that oxytocin plays as a neurotransmitter in the hypothalamus. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, oxytocin, otherwise known as the love molecule or the orgasm molecule, is one of many critical neurotransmitters that go low, and what you'll find, we have major hormones we talk about and major neurotransmitters, and all of them kind of play a role. And then there's autoantibodies. But if you take a look, you'll see, and this was developed by Dr. Jay Goldstein, where he found that if he went and gave 20 units, intramuscularly of the oxytocin, in a significant, probably about 40% of people, their fibro symptoms run away 40 minutes after the injection.
Wow, that's amazing.
And they had oxytocin deficiency as a key player. We will see in about 10% of cases where if I give a narcotic, I give codeine or Percocet, they don't say, hey, I feel high and my pain goes away. There's about 10% say, I feel like a normal, healthy person. My brain is back. My energy is back. And it usually doesn't take a high dose. They have an endorphin issue. People, NMDA receptor issues. You can give them ketamine, and that doesn't take the $1,000 a shot that you're paying if you go to the ketamine clinics. Compounding pharmacies, if it's prescribed, can make nasal ketamine, where you take a couple sprays, and you get the same effect as the IV, and it costs about $3. Instead of the esketamine that they're giving for depression, the nose spray from the regular pharmacy, it's about $800 a dose. So the oxytocin is one more of these. Now it's a little harder because they have sublingual tablets and the rest, but they don't work as well as the injection.
Really?
But if that's the neurotransmitter that's low, and you give it, bingo.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. So changing gears a little bit, restless leg. So you talk about how restless leg can also be part of, it can be caused by the usual things we think about, all of the electrolytes and iron and things like that, but also hypothyroidism and hypoglycemia. So yes. Can you fill in that a little bit more? That's a very unusual symptom in my estimation as far as hypothyroidism. Do you see it all the time?
It's common. You drop your blood sugars when you're sleeping, which is one of the reasons people wake up between 2 and 4 in the morning. Especially if they wake up hungry, then that's hypoglycemia. If they wake up with nightmares, there's a good chance that's hypoglycemia. If they wake up in sweats, the book talks about there's 4 main things, including low blood sugar, that can wake people up with sweats. So you drop energy to the muscles, and muscles are starting to do this. You drop dopamine levels with the low iron, and you mentioned, we all know about low iron. The MDs don't. Yeah, well, you know, the drug, that cute drug rep said give Mirapex, and she knows to the dollar how much of her drug I'm prescribing. And she's so nice to me when I'm doing well. I don't know, but so you give the Mirapex. Well, it causes a lot of side effects, and it used to be really expensive. Yeah, but you know, the insurance covered it. And so this is medicine. And you ask, how about iron? What does iron have to do with it? You know, and or well, iron test is normal. We realize researchers are saying that using the normal range that's supplied for iron testing is quote unquote insane. Now, what the study shows that ferritin levels, which is the best iron measure, I think, you know, in the absence of inflammation, if it's over 12, it's normal. You have to be under 12. On the other hand, the studies show that people with illnesses, if the ferritin is under 60, they will have no iron very often, and their bone marrow aspiration. They have no iron. And that's where the quote using the normal range of 12 is insane. What the studies show is that taking iron supplements help restless leg until your ferritin level gets over 60, then there's no more benefit. One caution, if you have low thyroid, because the low thyroid drops energy, and I can't give you the exact mechanism, but it is a trigger for the restless leg syndrome. Low magnesium, all of these things. So if you're taking thyroid and you add the iron at bedtime, because if you take the thyroid in the morning, you take the two at the same time, you won't absorb your thyroid. It'll block it, separate them out.
And I love part of what you keep bringing out is that this will work if this is your problem for so many of these different things. But if it's not, like there's a lot of studies where people will read about, hey, this is good for this is good for this. And people come in with a shopping bag full of all the supplements.
So Lauren, understand, my goal was how do you make effective treatment available for millions of people, 50 million worldwide. And you think, I was taught as a kid, you build a better mousetrap, they'll be the path to your door. What an utter crock of, it just doesn't work that way. You have really good marketing and putting $30 million of advertising, you might be able to go ahead, unless you're competing with the drug companies, in which case they will close you down if you mention the name of a disease and a treatment. They will say it is unproven. And you say, but here's 27 studies. And they'll say, we don't want to look at the studies. Did you pay the $400 million regulatory fee to be able to talk about that research for an illness? No. Then we are closing down your Facebook page. We are closing down your website. Okay, so this is basically a quirk in our regulatory system where it is illegal for anything cheap to be effectively promoted in this country. You can't talk about the science if you have any financial tie to the supplement. And all good people, but in a Congress that can't agree whether it's day or night, they had a vote in the Senate as an amendment to a bill saying it should be legal to discuss research on natural therapies. 88 senators voted against it. Okay, so they're all good people. But the systems are broken. So here I am. I found an effective way to help people. So you write a book. This is the 4th edition. First edition was about this thick. It was more pamphlet in 1996, and now it's like and it's so. The blue cover from Fatigue, fantastic. It's very good. So you write the book. You do the studies. Like I say, we have 8 studies now that we've done. So you figure out what works. How do I get paid for being here? I don't get paid for being here. You're out teaching. I'll be lecturing in Columbus next week. So, and then so you're out teaching. It's a game. How do you make effective treatment available for 50 million people who have no resources, have no access? So part of that game was I hold the U.S. patent for computerized physician. I made it for people with CFS and fibro, so everybody in the world could go online, fill out this, do a questionnaire, put in their labs if they had them, and it would say, here are the things causing your energy crisis, and then put together a treatment protocol. That would say, here are the supplements, here are the prescriptions most likely to help given your mix. Now, that's illegal to make that free to people. But now what we have instead is an energy analysis program that doesn't treat anything. It just...
You took out the disease name, the diagnosis.
It just helps optimize your energy and determine where your energy leaks are and how to optimize energy in your given case. It's energyanalysisprogram.com.
Okay, awesome.
And it's no charge. That's my wife and I. We used to charge $400, but everybody wrote back, I'm on Medicaid, I can't afford anything. And my wife and I just decided we're going to make it free to everybody. So these are the different tools. It's kind of a game in a system that's geared to prevent, because again, if you're out there, most of you are women with this disease, and you're saying, well, I should be getting my $25,000 in disability a month because I have a disability policy, but they're not paying. And there's 12 million of you. And you figure 25,000 times 12 million. Well, gee, that's a lot of money that they save by making believe you're crazy.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. My goodness.
You know. So
Crazy.
anyway,
Well,
that's the game.
you also alluded at the beginning to long COVID. So how does long COVID fit into all of this?
Long COVID is one more form of post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome. I mentioned I had nasty viral infection, knocked me, took my circuit breaker. And so it's not everybody who gets the infection, but people who tend to be under a lot of stress, and especially people who, because my kind of thing was, if I was sick, that I didn't take any days off. It's funny, it was Cal Ripken, who was a baseball player in Baltimore, who got the Iron Man Award. He didn't miss any days for illness in 20 years. I just laughed at him. Once I got back to med school for my chronic fatigue syndrome, I have not missed a day's work, even if I was yellow, bright yellow from having got hepatitis A from when I was vegetarian and I was in the Caribbean. They wash the vegetables and the water has hepatitis. I showed up at work. The universe took care of me. It had 2.5 foot of snow on the ground, and nobody showed up with me and my nurse. But these are people who tend to kind of push through the infection.
Right.
These are the ones that get the long COVID. They have months later, years later, tired, achy, weight gain. Weight gain will come later. Difficulty sleeping often takes a year to kick in. But the brain fog, pain, and fatigue, a shortness of breath, other symptoms are common. For those of you with shortness of breath from the COVID, just email me for the long COVID info sheets, or CFS, but also for the shortness of breath information sheet. I'll tell you how to take care of that and address that. So they trip the circuit breaker. It's the same thing, post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome. And they're ignoring anybody who's familiar with the research, and they're just doing, it'll be 30 years till the NIH, because all those researchers who over the last 25 years have started to figure out CFS, except for dribbles of the money, they're not giving it to them. They are hiring people who have not a fucking clue, which is what they've done in the 50 years I've been in medicine. The person they put in charge of CFS research knew nothing about it, never showed up at the conferences, was the only NIH had ever booed at every time his name came in because he never showed up. He never asked anybody who had a clue about the disease when he set up the study, so they all failed. And this is the same thing they're doing now. Nicer people, they're not quite the nitwits that this person was, but they are not hiring the people who know. They're not going to Stanford and getting the people who know. They're not going to UCLA and getting the doctors who've been researching it for 20 years. They're getting people who you say chronic fatigue syndrome. Who? What? And God bless them. But if you are waiting on them, you are going to have a wait. There's no need to wait for them to get their act together. Absolutely. You can get well now.
What have I not asked you that you want to make sure you leave with our audience?
Okay, remember what I talked about with these conditions, which is this people who tend to have an energy crisis. Why do they have the energy crisis? Because they have trouble setting boundaries. They have trouble saying no.
And yes.
Okay. And so as you get better, use your energy not to go back to what made you sick in the first place, not to catch up on those 18 bags of paperwork that have been turning to mold in your basement, not to be doing the stuff everybody else wants you to do and tells you should do, and that your brain is programmed that, well, there's a good boy, a good girl. This is what good boys and good girls do. They give up for everybody and they take care of everybody except themselves. Screw that stuff. See what feels good to you without harming anybody else. Use your energy for that. If you do, and say no to things that feel bad, no justification needed. If you get that, another name for what I just described is being authentic or knowing yourself. And what will happen, it's kind of like Spider-Man got bit by the radioactive spider, and now he's got superpowers. And you think that after this disease, I really should have got superpowers or something for it. This is your superpower, is authenticity. Learning to say no to things that feel bad and following your bliss. And you'll look back and realize this illness was a gift. I know it's hard to believe now, but I've been there, done that, and I can truly say that. See what feels good to you, do that. Say no to things that feel bad. That's simple. And if the person says, but how dare you do that? I say, doctor's orders. I'm a doctor, right? So, and I'm not going to order you to do anything, but you can make believe. Well, the doctor told me I have to say no to this. You're telling me I shouldn't listen to the doctor? And then they'll go, oh. And you'll find these are little energy vampires. These are people who come by and will do an emotional toxic waste dump on you and dump their stuff. And then they'll suck you dry. And you can tell you've met an energy vampire because you feel worse when they walk away. Most of your friends, you feel better when they come visit, but they walk away, you feel worse. And when you start using language and knows, like I'm just doing here, and you start invoking the power of the almighty doctor told me, whatever it takes, these people will leave you alone and go find somebody else to suck dry.
Got it. That's great. So I will link in the show notes to all of the various places that you said that people can get information from you and find out more about you. And thank you, Jacob. This has been wonderful.
Oh, Lauren, it's been a blast. And forgive me if I get a little melodramatic. It's just a matter of, you've been through so much, guys. And it's a way to try to help you, to help make a point, and to help get you free of what you get stuck in. So please forgive me if it got a little over the board for you. And it has been a blast, Lauren. Thank you so much. And as I live in Hawaii, I can say aloha, everybody.
Aloha. Thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Dale.
And I'm Tamara.
And we're hosts of the Kainos Project podcast,
where we help you tackle ancient Christian truths in everyday settings.
The word Kainos means new, and that's exactly what we want to do on our podcast. Bring something new from what is old in our faith.
And on this show, you might hear us explore topics like what the Bible has to say about student loan forgiveness, discuss how the Satanic Temple affects our view of religious liberty in America, or even question why is it that so many people are having rapture anxiety.
To learn more about the podcast, go to lifeaudio.com.
Hey everyone, this is Jordan Seculo. You've spoken and we've heard you loud and clear. That's why this month we're doing something big. We're proud to announce our brand new ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive. Our legal teams will be focusing on the issues that you, our ACLJ members, have told us matter the most to you. Life and religious liberty. We're redoubling our efforts to beat back the radical left's attack on your constitutional religious freedoms and to defend the sanctity of human life. Life and liberty are the cornerstones of our great nation, but they're not guaranteed. When the values we hold dear are under attack, it's up to all of us to take a stand or risk losing them forever. This is not just a call to fund our legal battles. This is your moment to get in the fight. Just as before, every tax-deductible gift will be doubled, dollar for dollar, through the ACLJ Life and Liberty Drive, giving you twice the impact to defend your freedoms and help us fight to literally save lives. Join the ACLJ in the fight to keep America free.
Are you looking for a holistically minded healthcare practitioner who truly treats root cause rather than symptom suppression? Unfortunately, even in the alternative healing professions, this isn't a given. That's why I've created wholehealthdoctor.com, a resource to help connect patients to healthcare practitioners in their area who share a root cause philosophy. Alternatively, most of the practitioners listed also practice telehealth. So if there isn't anyone local to you, you can still find a great practitioner to help you regain optimal health. Go to wholehealthdoctor.com. That's wholehealthdr.com. Type in your location or adjust the specialty that you're looking for and find the practitioner who's right for you.
Thanks for listening to Christian Natural Health. This show is run by you, so please write in with topic and guest suggestions for future shows. For more great content, subscribe to Dr. Lauren's blog at www.drlaurendeville.com or follow her on Facebook or Twitter at Dr. Lauren DeVille. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to share it with your friends and give us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It really helps us to stand out so other people can discover great content as well. Have a great week and God bless you.
Scripture and brain science agree. Meditating on God's Word transforms us and reduces stress in our lives. I'm Jody Nisnik, host of So Much More, Creating Space for God, a scripture meditation podcast. And each week I give you space to hear God's Word, listen to the Spirit, and pray about what's on your heart. And then we have a thoughtful conversation with guests to help us go deeper. Listen and subscribe at lifeaudio.com.